The air inside the musty archive room hung still, thick with the scent of decaying paper and forgotten time. It was 2025, precisely 40 years after David and Sarah Miller vanished from Valley Ranch, and junior FBI agent Annie Sharma felt a prickle of unease as she sifted through a box of property deeds. Then she saw it, a topographical survey map, brittle with age, tucked away with a deed for land David Miller had inherited just before their disappearance. Pinned to it were cryptic annotations, hand-drawn symbols, and dates that seemed to whisper secrets from the past. Staring at the crude red X marking a spot deep within the wooded acreage, a wave of dread washed over Sharma. It was a place known, yet utterly unknown, a void in official records, a chilling suggestion that the Millers hadn't just disappeared, but had been deliberately and meticulously erased from the face of the earth, leaving behind only a breadcrumb trail of their own making. The sheer, cold precision of it, visible across 40 years of silence, was more horrifying than any violent struggle could ever be. David and Sarah Miller, a young couple in their late 20s, had been a fixture of the Quiet Valley Ranch community. They were a study in contrasts. David, an architect with dreams as grand as his blueprints, perpetually frustrated by his modest reality. Sarah, a bright, warm elementary school teacher whose every interaction promised sunshine. Their life together, while filled with love, was subtly shadowed by financial strain and a quiet yearning for something more. Their roots in Valley Ranch were deep, yet their sudden, inexplicable vanishing act in October 1985 ripped a hole through the fabric of their community. It wasn't a single life extinguished, but two, leaving behind not just grief, but a profound, disorienting absence. David's distinctive blue pickup truck, his livelihood and his connection to the outside world, vanished with them. The most baffling aspect? Absolutely no trace. No forced entry, no witnesses, no struggle. Just an emptiness where they used to be, a void so absolute it defied logic, leaving everyone asking, how did two people, in broad daylight, with their very own truck, simply cease to exist? The revelation, when it finally came, wasn't a violent confession or a desperate cry for help, but a quiet discovery buried in the bureaucratic detritus of a forgotten land transaction. A faded map marked with symbols only David, the meticulous architect, could have devised, and Sarah, the sharp, organized teacher, might have understood. These weren't the scribblings of someone in distress, but the carefully crafted blueprints for an elaborate escape, a hidden narrative that had been playing out in plain sight for 4 decades. This wasn't merely a missing persons case. It was a meticulously planned vanishing act, a deliberate severing of ties that pointed to secrets far more complex and disturbing than any initial theory of accident or foul play could ever encompass. The true horror wasn't what happened to them, but what they had done themselves, an act of profound deception that would rewrite everything believed about their final moments and expose a chilling truth about human nature. David and Sarah Miller weren't just names on a cold case file. They were vibrant individuals whose absence left gaping wounds. David, the dreamer whose ambitious plans often outpaced his means, and Sarah, whose capacity for nurturing extended from her classroom to her personal life, were the heartbeats of their small world. Their disappearance wasn't just a tragedy for their families, but a cascade of devastation affecting parents, siblings, colleagues, and friends, each clinging to memories and fueling a relentless 40-year quest for answers. Sarah's colleagues at Valley Ranch Elementary often spoke of her infectious optimism, a light extinguished too soon. David's mother, Eleanor, a woman who never truly accepted the official narrative, spent years poring over grainy photographs, her grief a constant, silent ache. Their united front, the shared hope and eventual despair, underscored the sheer weight of their dual loss. To understand the Millers' disappearance is to understand the ripple effect of a life or two lives abruptly and irrevocably erased, leaving behind a profound emptiness and an enduring plea for closure, a testament to the enduring power of love and the devastating impact of betrayal. This is the story of David and Sarah Miller, a couple who walked away from their lives, or perhaps were taken, leaving behind a mystery that spanned 40 years. You've heard the whispers, the speculation, the quiet despair that settled over Valley Ranch like a shroud. But what you are about to learn will shatter those assumptions, revealing a truth more devastating than anyone could have imagined. It's a story of meticulous planning, hidden motives, and a conspiracy of silence that has echoed for decades. We're delving deep into a case that redefined the meaning of disappearance, a story that will make you question everything you see. Where are you tuning in from as we begin this journey into the heart of the Miller mystery? David Miller wasn't merely an architect. He was a symphony of precise lines and soaring aspirations, barely contained within the confines of his late 20s. His gaze, often distant, held the quiet intensity of blueprints unfolding in his mind, a stark contrast to the slightly rumpled, ink-stained shirts he favored. He was tall and lean, with hands that were both steady for drafting and restless with an unspoken ambition. His hair, the color of dark oak, was usually a little too long, swept back as if against a perpetual wind of ideas challenging the grounded reality of Valley Ranch. Sarah, his wife, was the sun to his architectural structure. In her late 20s as well, she was a smaller, brighter presence, her movements quick and graceful, her laughter like wind chimes. Her eyes, the color of warm hazel, always seemed to hold a spark of genuine delight and infectious optimism that could lift the heaviest of moods. She often wore simple floral print dresses, a splash of color in the muted tones of their small-town life, her presence radiating a warmth that drew people in. The way David's restless energy would visibly soften when Sarah entered a room, the way she'd subtly lean into his side as they walked, spoke of a shared silence far more profound than any spoken word, a quiet understanding that made them a complete, vibrant unit. Their days in Valley Ranch unfolded with a predictable rhythm that underscored the sheer impossibility of their vanishing. David's mornings began before dawn, the faint glow of his drafting lamp often visible from the street as he meticulously worked on sketches for projects that never seemed to materialize. A silent battle between his visions and his finances. Had leave by 8:00 a.m., usually with a thermos of black coffee and a quiet kiss for Sarah, heading towards the town's small architectural firm where he was often the last to leave, the weight of unmet expectations a constant companion. Sarah's day began with greeting the dawn chorus, her nurturing spirit already reaching out to the world. She'd be at Valley Ranch Elementary by 7:00 a.m., her classroom a haven of colorful drawings and eager young faces. Her routine was brimming with small acts of kindness, slipping an extra piece of fruit into a student's lunchbox, staying late to help a struggling child with their reading, or organizing bake sales for school trips. Evenings were their shared anchor. Sometimes they'd have dinner with friends, their laughter echoing through the small diner on Main Street. Other times, it was quiet evenings at home, David poring over land surveys and Sarah grading papers, their lives intertwined in a tapestry of shared hopes and quiet domesticity. The subtle frustration in David's voice when discussing project setbacks and Sarah's unwavering encouragement were the only hints of the undercurrents beneath their seemingly placid surface. David, the architect, was a study in disciplined passion. His workspace was a testament to his ordered mind, every pencil sharpened, every ruler perfectly aligned. Yet, this precision was infused with a dreamer's intensity. His late-night sketches often revealed concepts years ahead of their time, a reflection of a deep-seated dissatisfaction with the limitations of his present. Sarah, the teacher, possessed a different kind of brilliance, an intuitive understanding of the human heart. Her colleagues at the elementary school often spoke of her aura of sunshine, a rare quality that made even the most challenging days bearable. She was known for her handwritten notes of encouragement tucked into students' report cards and her uncanny ability to connect with shy or withdrawn children. Their shared moments, like their Saturday morning ritual of coffee and crosswords, or their unspoken agreement on how to manage their modest income, revealed a profound partnership built on mutual respect and a deep, abiding love. David's quiet idealism found its anchor in Sarah's grounded optimism, and her unwavering belief in his potential fuel his often frustrated drive. Though their lives were outwardly modest, David and Sarah harbored quiet dreams, aspirations that seemed to shimmer just beyond their reach. David dreamt of designing a community center that would truly uplift Valley Ranch, a legacy of his architectural skill. He'd shown Sarah countless sketches, his eyes alight with the possibility of creating something enduring and beautiful from the often uninspiring landscapes he worked with. Sarah, too, had plans. She spoke often of starting a family, envisioning a home filled with the laughter of children, and of expanding her reach within education, perhaps developing a new curriculum for early literacy. Their inherited land, a small, secluded parcel that David had received from a distant, estranged uncle, represented a tangible opportunity. David saw it as a canvas for his grandest designs, a place where they could build their dream home, a sanctuary away from financial pressures. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, saw it as a source of potential security, a place where they could put down even deeper roots, a commitment to a future that felt increasingly within their grasp. The enigma of David and Sarah Miller was as meticulously crafted as one of David's blueprints. They were not restless souls. Their roots in Valley Ranch were deep, woven into the very fabric of the community they served. There were no whispers of infidelity, no signs of escalating debt that suggested desperation, no medical histories hinting at depression or mental instability. Sarah's unwavering dedication to her students, her active participation in church socials, and David's quiet but consistent presence at town meetings painted a picture of stability and commitment. They were anchors, not wanderers. The thought of the their complete and utter absence, therefore, wasn't just a mystery, it was a profound and deeply personal affront to the very people who knew them best, a puzzle whose pieces, when examined with the benefit of hindsight, only deepened the unanswerable question of how two such vibrant, grounded individuals could simply cease to be. Valley Ranch wasn't just a town, It was a breath held deep in the lungs of the Midwest. Houses with stigma huddled towers and future ramblers. Deal and elevated avenue. Their manageable limited thing rapidity. The air itself felt different here. Cleaner, quieter, carrying the scent of freshly cut hay in summer and wood smoke in autumn. David and Sarah Miller's small, newly built house sat on the edge of this gentle sprawl on Willow Creek Lane, a cul-de-sac that offered a sliver of seclusion without true isolation. From their porch, one could see the rolling fields stretching toward the hazy horizon and the dark, dense line of the whispering woods bordering the eastern edge of David's inherited land, a place that felt both like a natural extension of their backyard and a boundary to the known world. The silence here wasn't empty. It was filled with the murmur of the wind through tall grass, the distant lowing of cattle, and the occasional chirp of a prairie bird. This was a place where the rhythm of life was dictated by the sun and the seasons, a tranquil tableau that seemed designed to ward off any hint of trouble. The year was 1985, a time when the world felt a little larger, a little slower. Mobile phones were still a futuristic luxury, and a missing person report meant boots on the ground, not pinging cell towers. Valley Ranch embodied this era's simpler pace. Life revolved around the town square, where the general store, the post office, and Sheriff Brody's modest two-man department formed the hub of local activity. National news trickled in via nightly television broadcasts and radio, but the real stories, the ones that shaped daily life, were local. The upcoming high school football game, Mrs. Gable's prize-winning apple pie at the county fair, or the quiet concern over David and Sarah Miller's sudden disappearance. Fashion leaned towards practical denim and subtle earth tones. Technology was rotary phones, bulky televisions, and the burgeoning popularity of VCRs. There was a distinct comfort in this predictability, a sense of shared experience that permeated every interaction, making the Millers' vanishing act all the more jarring, like a discordant note in a familiar melody. Valley Ranch was the kind of community where generations lived side by side, their lives intertwined like the branches of the old oak trees lining Main Street. Sarah, with her radiant smile and boundless energy, was the heart of Valley Ranch Elementary, her classroom a beacon of warmth where children learned their ABCs and the importance of kindness. David, the quiet architect, was a known quantity, a steady presence at town meetings discussing zoning laws for new developments, and a man often seen sketching by the creek on his inherited land, dreaming up projects that fell just beyond reach. Neighbors often commented on their harmonious relationship, the way Sarah's bright spirit seemed to ground David's sometimes distant demeanor. They were part of the personal feed is the physical Leo of the unit and later some hula appeared by the David of Blin political that Sheriff Brody, a man who had seen his share of disputes over property lines and wayward livestock, found himself staring into a mystery that defied his years of experience. Beneath the placid surface of Valley Ranch, however, subtle currents of unease could always be found. The whispering woods, while beautiful, also held a reputation for being easy to get lost in, a place where the trails could become disorienting and shadows played tricks on the eyes. There were hushed rumors of transient campers venturing onto uncared-for properties, and local teenagers sometimes spoke of exploring abandoned farmhouses on the outskirts, places that carried a faint, lingering chill. David's inherited land, though picturesque, was also untouched, unmapped in any official capacity beyond the deed itself, a ready-made blank slate for anything one might wish to conceal. While living to be part of the devil, as if the ending of the fucking to the whales, it was precisely the very moment of over that made them vulnerable to them entirely something that operated enough over the figure of the information. The very tranquility that defined Valley Ranch also masked an unsettling potential for secrets that lay just beyond the well-trodden paths. The days leading up to October 17, 1985, for David and Sarah Miller, were a tapestry woven with the familiar threads of their Valley Ranch lives. David had spoken excitedly about surveying his inherited land that Thursday, a place he envisioned as their future sanctuary, a canvas for his architectural dreams away from the constraints of their current financial reality. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, was supportive, her own dreams of starting a family subtly intertwined with the possibility of a new home on that very parcel. Their routine was set. David would leave early, a quick kiss to Sarah before heading out, and she would follow later, her school bag a familiar sight as she left for Valley Ranch Elementary. Their evenings were their shared ritual, a quiet winding down where dreams were discussed over simple dinners. This seemingly ordinary rhythm, this predictable turning of the clock within the safe confines of their community, was precisely what set the stage for their eventual, impossible vanishing, a carefully orchestrated prelude to the silence that would descend upon Willow Creek Lane, leaving the picturesque landscape a chilling testament to a mystery that had just begun. David Miller's alarm blared at 5:47 a.m., its insistent chime slicing through the pre-dawn quiet of Willow Creek Lane. He stirred, the lingering tendrils of a blueprint dream clinging to him. Beside him, Sarah was already a slow breath away from awakening, her face serene in the dim light filtering through the minute blinds. The air in their small, newly built house was still, carrying the faint scent of Sarah's lavender sachet and the lingering warmth of their shared bed. Outside, the first hint of dawn painted the horizon in muted grays and soft blues, promising a crisp October day, typical for Valley Ranch. There was an unspoken agreement in the hushed atmosphere. Today would be like any other day. David reached for the worn leather sketchbook on his nightstand, his fingers tracing the faint lines of an unfinished design, a silent ritual before the tangible world fully claimed him. For Sarah, her day would begin with the familiar ballet of preparing for her students, the quiet hum of a life dedicated to brightening young minds. By 6:30 a.m., David was downstairs, the aroma of freshly brewed black coffee filling the kitchen. He donned his usual work attire, comfortable, slightly worn khakis and a plaid shirt, the ink stain on the cafe familiar badge. He meticulously packed his thermos, checking his briefcase for the topographical maps he intended to study on his inherited land. Sarah joined him a few minutes later, her movements a testament to her morning optimism, her bright hazel eyes already reflecting the day's promise. She was dressed in a simple floral print dress, a cheerful splash of color against the muted tones of their kitchen. Their last shared breakfast was quiet, punctuated by brief, affectionate exchanges. "Don't forget to call me this afternoon, maybe before school lets out," Sarah said softly, her hand covering his momentarily. David nodded, his gaze distant, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes as he replied, "I will, Sar. Just want to get a feel for that acreage before the sun gets too high." He kissed her forehead, a familiar gesture that now carried the weight of an unknown future. David left the house at precisely 7:52 a.m., his distinctive blue pickup truck crunching on the gravel driveway. His destination, the roughly 10 acres of land his uncle had left him, bordering the dense whispering woods. He waved to their neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who was out tending to his rose bushes, a fleeting interaction that would become a crucial timestamp. Sarah followed an hour later at 8:58 a.m. She gathered her worn leather satchel, filled with lesson plans and grading papers, and gave their mailbox a final, absent-minded pat as she closed their front door. Her first call of the day was to her sister, Martha, at 9:15 a.m., confirming dinner plans for the coming weekend. The conversation was light, filled with Sarah's excited chatter about a new reading program she was implementing. Later, at 10:30 a.m., she had a brief phone conversation with Mary Beth Peterson, a fellow teacher, discussing a school fundraiser. Sarah mentioned her eagerness for a quiet evening with David after he checks out that land. The details, mundane in their telling, wove a tight tapestry of normalcy, an intricate web of predictable actions that made their absence all the more baffling. There was no hint of distress, no deviation from their established routines, only the quiet unfolding of a Thursday in October. David's last confirmed sighting was at the Exxon station on the edge of town at 9:04 a.m., where he purchased gas and a newspaper. The attendant recalled him being unremarkable, just another local stopping for fuel. Sarah's penultimate contact was a brief phone call with Martha at 11:30 a.m. that morning, a call that was precisely logged and confirmed. Sarah sounded cheerful, confirming their weekend plans and mentioning she was looking forward to seeing David later. The last concrete evidence of their presence on their property was Sarah's school satchel, found abandoned near their mailbox at 3:15 p.m. It was still zipped, its contents undisturbed, as if she had simply set it down for a moment. Sheriff Brody's initial welfare check, prompted by Sarah not returning home and David not showing up for their planned dinner, found the house secure, no signs of forced entry, and David's truck conspicuously absent. Their last projected moment, the point at which their known timeline fractured into the abyss of the unknown, was marked by this unsettling discovery of Sarah's abandoned satchel and the silent, empty garage. The window of normalcy closed between 3:15 p.m. and the time David was expected home for dinner at 6:00 p.m., when his blue pickup truck still hadn't appeared, and Sarah's own vehicle was also missing from its usual parking spot. A knot of unease began to tighten in the quiet of Willow Creek Lane. The silence that had seemed so peaceful earlier in the day now felt heavy, pregnant with an unarticulated dread. This was the moment the fabric of Valley Ranch's tranquility began to unravel, the precise instant when a vanished couple transformed from a potential worry into a chilling, unfathomable mystery. The initial concern began subtly, a slow unease that crept in as the afternoon wore on. Sarah Miller's absence from her classroom at Valley Ranch Elementary after dismissal marked the first tangible crack in the day's carefully constructed normalcy. Her colleague, Mary Beth Peterson, tried calling her cell phone around 3:30 p.m., but it went straight to voicemail, a minor inconvenience, perhaps a dead battery or a forgotten charge. By 4:15 p.m., when Sheriff Brody's small department received its first call from a worried Mary Beth, The situation was already escalating beyond a simple misconnection. Mary Beth, her voice tight with growing anxiety, described Sarah's unusual punctuality and dedication, emphasizing how impossible it was for her to simply not show up for school or be reachable. The fact that David's distinctive blue pickup truck was also missing from their driveway, reported by an observant neighbor who'd seen it there that morning, added another layer to the burgeoning unease. Sheriff Brody, a man more accustomed to boundary disputes than vanishing acts, dispatched Deputy Miller, a distant cousin of David, to conduct a welfare check at the Miller residence. He cautioned Deputy Miller to approach cautiously, but in the back of his mind, a chilling possibility, that of two people gone missing simultaneously, began to take root. The early attempts to rationalize David stopping late to finish a blueprint, Sarah getting sidetracked, were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer interconnectedness of their absence. They were always together, or at least, always accounted for. The call to Sheriff Brody's office at 4:45 p.m. from David's mother, Eleanor Miller, amplified the growing panic. Eleanor, who lived 2 counties over but maintained daily contact, stated she'd spoken to Sarah that morning, and Sarah had mentioned looking forward to a quiet evening with David after he surveyed his inherited land. She sounded so optimistic. Sheriff, Eleanor's voice quavered, the desperation clear. And David, he always checks in. Something is very wrong. This second, urgent call, corroborated by Sarah's unexplained absence from school and David's equally inexplicable disappearance with his truck, shifted the incident from a potential missing person to a full-blown, high-priority incident. Sheriff Brody, now facing the distinct possibility of 2 missing residents, one of whom was a respected local teacher, immediately authorized a wider notification to surrounding jurisdictions and alerted the FBI's regional liaison, a perfunctory gesture for a rural case that seldom escalated beyond local resources. The urgency pressed in. The clock was ticking, and the window for voluntary departure or a simple accident was rapidly closing, replaced by the cold, hard reality of 2 people simply gone. By 6:00 p.m., Deputy Miller had arrived at the Miller residence on Willow Creek Lane. The house was secure, the doors locked, and Sarah's school satchel, found abandoned near the mailbox, was the sole, unsettling clue. The discovery of the satchel, still zipped and seemingly undisturbed, only deepened the mystery. It was as if Sarah had simply set it down for a moment and vanished. Sheriff Brody, upon receiving Deputy Miller's report, immediately initiated a level Roman 2 missing persons investigation, a step usually reserved for cases with aggravating circumstances. The local county sheriff's department, with its limited staff of 5 deputies, now faced the monumental task of locating not 1, but 2 missing individuals along with a vehicle. Sheriff Brody organized a preliminary search grid, focusing on the immediate vicinity of the Miller home and the access roads leading to David's inherited land. He dispatched Deputy Miller and Deputy Evans to canvass neighbors, gather last known sighting information, and establish a preliminary timeline. The initial theories were wide-ranging: a tragic accident on his land, a pre-planned elopement coupled with Sarah's own departure, or a more sinister, unknown perpetrator targeting the couple. The focus immediately turned to David's inherited acreage, the last known potential destination for David, and the location where Sarah's satchel was found abandoned. The critical first 48 hours were a blur of frantic activity and gnawing uncertainty. Sheriff Brody, working around the clock, meticulously pieced together the Millers' last known hours. Interviews with neighbors yielded little. Mr. Henderson reported waving to David around 8:00 a.m., a fleeting, inconsequential interaction that now held immense significance. The Exxon attendant recalled David purchasing gas and a newspaper around 9:00 a.m., describing him as unremarkable. Sarah's last confirmed contact was the 11:30 a.m. call to her sister Martha. The lack of any trace of David's distinctive blue pickup truck became the most baffling element. Search teams fanned out across David's inherited 10 acres, a dense, wooded area bordering the Whispering Woods. They combed through the underbrush, followed faint trails, and meticulously scanned the terrain for any sign of David's truck or the couple themselves. By the end of the second day, their efforts yielded nothing but frustration. A single, smudged footprint near the property line that analysis later deemed inconclusive, and a receipt for camping supplies found in a public trash can, a lead that evaporated into speculation. The initial theories of accident or voluntary escape, always present, began to yield to the chilling possibility of foul play, a theory that gained traction with each passing hour of fruitless searching. As the first 48 hours turned into 72 without any sign of David or Sarah, a palpable sense of desperation began to settle over Valley Ranch and within Sheriff Brody's office. The initial, orderly search had yielded no tangible results, no wreckage, no signs of struggle, no witnesses to anything unusual. The absence of David's truck was a critical missing piece. The local investigative resources were stretched thin, and the case was rapidly outpacing their capacity. The community, initially offering concerned support, began to succumb to the slow creep of dread, murmurs of the uncanny and the sinister replacing hopeful speculation. Sheriff Brody, acutely aware of the limitations of his department and the increasing pressure from the families, formally requested assistance from the FBI's regional office. He documented the absence of any evidence supporting a voluntary departure or a simple accident, emphasizing the highly unusual nature of the complete lack of any trace and the dual disappearance. The case, once a local concern, was officially transitioning into a complex, multi-jurisdictional investigation, a chilling testament to the fact that David and Sarah Miller had not just disappeared, but had vanished into a void that was proving far more difficult to penetrate than anyone had anticipated. The investigations that would follow would need to be more than just boots on the ground. They would require a meticulous re-examination of every detail, the kind of deep dive this quiet ranch town had never before required. The vanishing of David and Sarah Miller had sent ripples of shock and disbelief through the tight-knit community of Valley Ranch. Within hours of Sheriff Brody confirming their absence, the collective anxiety began to manifest as spontaneous action. Neighbors, propelled by a desperate need to do something, started organizing. Sarah's colleagues from Valley Ranch Elementary, led by Mary Beth Peterson, transformed the school's auditorium into an impromptu command center. They donned fluorescent vests, gathered maps of the county, and began coordinating civilian search parties. David's mother, Eleanor, despite her grief, arrived with a carload of provisions and a quiet determination that fueled the volunteers. Soon, groups splintered off, each with a specific focus. A swift water rescue team, comprised of local fishermen and former lifeguards, prepared to scour Willow Creek. A group of experienced hikers and former scouts volunteered to comb the dense expanse of the Whispering Woods. A contingent of cyclists, familiar with every backward and abandoned trail, pledged to cover the wider perimeter. The air thrummed with a shared urgency, a communal prayer whispered in action, a fragile hope that together they could pierce the veil of silence that had fallen over Willow Creek Lane. The combined networks of the elementary school, the local church, and simply concerned citizens created an overwhelming tide of humanity, all dedicated to finding their missing neighbors. As the civilian mobilization intensified, Sheriff Brody's limited resources were quickly outstripped. The sheer scale of the missing persons operation necessitated an immediate escalation. By late afternoon on October 18th, a contingent of county sheriff deputies from neighboring jurisdictions arrived, their presence a visible testament to the gravity of the situation. The FBI's regional liaison, initially hesitant, now coordinated with Brody, deploying specialized units. A K-9 unit, their handlers wary but determined, arrived with dogs trained to track both human scent and any potential disturbance in the terrain. State police helicopters joined the aerial search, their powerful searchlights cutting through the deepening dusk, scanning the vast acreage and surrounding wilderness. An official command post was established at the county fairgrounds, a sterile tent city of tactical maps, communication stations, and operational briefings. Fire departments dispatched their specialized rescue teams, equipped with advanced communication gear, night vision equipment, and first aid supplies, ready to tackle the challenging terrain. This was no longer a local police matter. It was a full-scale, multi-agency operation, a meticulously coordinated military-style effort to reclaim two lost souls. The first few days of the massive search yielded a torturous cycle of hope and crushing disappointment. A search party, meticulously combing a section of the Whispering Woods near David's inherited land, discovered a discarded, child-sized jacket. The initial surge of adrenaline quickly turned to despair when it was identified as belonging to a local boy who had lost it months prior. Another team, investigating a lead about a dark, speeding sedan witnessed on a rural highway on the night of the disappearance, tracked down the vehicle's owner only to find a family on a long-distance trip, their alibi ironclad. Near a rarely used logging road on the outskirts of David's property, a single, mud-caked hiking boot was found, sparking a fervent belief that it belonged to David. However, closer examination revealed it was of a different make and size, a relic from another time, another story. Each fragmented clue, each partial testimony, offered a tantalizing glimpse of direction, only to dissolve into frustratingly plausible, yet ultimately unrelated, explanations. The evidence seemed to fracture and disperse the moment it was seized upon, leaving investigators and volunteers alike reeling from the emotional whiplash. The sheer scale of both the Millers' lives and the surrounding wilderness presented formidable obstacles. David's inherited 10 acres, while not vast in comparison to some rural properties, was dense with oak and pine, its undergrowth thick and tangled, making systematic ground-level searches an arduous, backbreaking task. The Whispering Woods, a sprawling natural preserve, offered miles of unmapped terrain, treacherous ravines, and dense thickets that swallowed any potential sign. The technological limitations of 1985 were acutely felt. Without GPS or advanced drone capabilities, search perimeters relied on physical markers and meticulous, often manual, grid mapping. The constant flux of weather added another layer of complexity. Brief, heavy rain showers washed away any faint scent trails for the K9 units, and subsequent days of high winds obscured any disturbed foliage. The sheer size of the area to be covered dwarfed the available manpower, both official and volunteer. Every map showed vast swaths of territory still unsearched, a growing testament to the impossibility of covering it all before the trail went irrevocably cold. The operation, though massive, was constantly battling the inherent limitations of its environment and era. As the intensive search days bled into a week, the initial surge of volunteer support began to wane. The endless hours, the persistent lack of any concrete findings, and the gnawing uncertainty began to take their toll. Fatigue settled in, not just physical exhaustion, but a deeper emotional weariness. Budgetary pressures on the county sheriff's department, already stretched thin, started to become a significant concern. Discussions began about scaling back the aerial patrols and reducing the number of active ground search teams. The overwhelming mobilization, so crucial in the initial crisis, was proving unsustainable in the long haul. The families, though still clinging to hope, recognized the diminishing returns. The initial belief that a swift, coordinated effort would yield answers was giving way to the grim realization that David and Sarah Miller had perhaps achieved their vanishing act with an expertise that defied conventional investigation. The case was evolving from a race against time into a chilling testament to something far more deliberate, something that was preparing them for a new phase, the arduous, often disheartening, journey of a cold, enduring mystery. The official search for David and Sarah Miller, a grand, multi-agency undertaking that had consumed Valley Ranch and surrounding counties for weeks, was finally winding down. By the spring of 1986, the helicopters were grounded, the K9 units had been withdrawn, and the last of the specialized rescue teams had packed up their gear. Sheriff Brody, his face etched with fatigue and the quiet defeat of a lost battle, officially suspended the active search. The files, thick with witness statements, inconclusive forensic reports, and empty grids marked with searched, were transferred to the Cold Case Division of the FBI's regional office. Each piece of paper represented a sliver of hope that had ultimately dissolved into bureaucratic limbo. The millions of dollars spent, the collective energy expended, had yielded nothing but an ever-widening chasm of unanswered questions. For Sheriff Brody, the case became a ghost that would haunt his tenure, a personal reminder of the limits of his jurisdiction and the chilling efficiency of a mystery that refused to be solved. He remained cordial with the Miller family, offering platitudes about keeping the case open, but the active pursuit had irrevocably ceased, replaced by the sterile reality of deferred justice. For the families of David and Sarah Miller, the cessation of the search marked a profound shift. The initial frenzy of activity, however futile, had provided a sense of purpose, a shared focus that momentarily papered over grief. Now, as the outside world moved on, they were left adrift in the stagnant waters of uncertainty. The leaner Miller, David's mother, became a fixture at the local diner, her conversations invariably circling back to the fateful October day, her eyes scanning the faces of newcomers for any flicker of recognition, any hint of news. Sarah's parents, once beacons of optimism, became withdrawn, their shared glances filled with a sorrow too deep for words. Sarah's sister, Martha, initially the most vocal advocate for continuing the search, gradually retreated, her own dreams of family put on indefinite hold, her once vibrant spirit dulled by years of unanswered pleas. The anniversaries of October 17th became solemn, private affairs, marked by the scattering of flowers on the Millers' abandoned property or quiet vigils at the local church, each year a painful echo of the last, a testament to a grief that refused to ebb. As the years turned into a decade, then too, David and Sarah's case, once a national news story, faded into local folklore and then the burgeoning landscape of the internet. Dedicated forums sprung up, populated by what became known as armchair detectives. Theories proliferated like weeds. The Millers had been kidnapped by a shadowy organization of which David had stumbled upon secrets. They'd faked their own deaths to escape crippling debt. They'd been victims of a clandestine government experiment. Amateur documentaries, grainy and filled with sensationalized interviews, began to appear on early streaming platforms. Podcast series dedicated to unsolved mysteries often revisited the Millers, dissecting every piece of available information, creating elaborately constructed narratives that often bore little resemblance to the official case file. The families, initially relieved by the renewed interest, soon found themselves overwhelmed by the barrage of speculation, their private griefs dissected and broadcasted to strangers, often with little regard for accuracy or their fragile emotional states. The desperation for answers led families to explore avenues far beyond official channels. Eleanor Miller, in particular, spent a small fortune on private investigators who, like Sheriff Brody, eventually hit the same insurmountable walls. She consulted psychics who offered vague prophecies of water and hidden places, and even dabbled in amateur land surveys, convinced some hidden clue lay buried on the unexamined acreage. Martha, Sarah's sister, collaborated with other families who had experienced similar unsolved disappearances, pooling resources to hire a renowned forensic genealogist, hoping to uncover distant familial connections that might shed light on the Millers' past. These private endeavors, fueled by a potent mix of love and despair, often led to more confusion and financial strain than concrete answers. Each new lead, each promising theory, would invariably dissolve, leaving behind only the bitter taste of renewed disappointment and a gnawing suspicion that they were chasing ghosts in an increasingly complex web of possibility. By the late 1990s, the Miller case had become a permanent, unsettling fixture in the Valley Ranch community's consciousness. New residents would hear the hushed whispers about the couple who simply vanished into thin air. Younger generations of law enforcement, reviewing the dusty manila folder, might occasionally find a tangential clue, a forgotten tip that seemed to reignite a spark of possibility, only for it to fizzle out against the sheer lack of evidence. The inherited 10 acres, now overgrown and weathered, remained a stark, silent monument to the mystery. The case, once a case of active investigation, had transformed through the sheer pressure of unexplained time and human persistence into a persistent, pervasive question etched into the very landscape of their lives, preparing the ground for something that could only be a shock, a revelation that would shatter the decades of quiet, agonizing uncertainty. The air in the dusty county records annex hung heavy with the scent of aged paper and institutional neglect. It was a Tuesday, a quiet one in early spring of 2025, and Annie Sharma, armed with a new lead not from a Miller file, but from an unrelated property dispute, was sifting through decades-old land surveys that had been deemed too insignificant to merit digitization in 1985. Her target was a large parcel west of Valley Ranch, but a misfiled box, its label faded to near illegibility, snagged her attention. Inside, amidst mundane deeds and easements, her fingers brushed against something brittle and stiff. It was a topographical survey map, far older than the surrounding documents, its paper yellowed and creased as if it had been folded and refolded countless times. Tucked beneath it was a deed for a 10-acre plot, recently inherited by one David Miller. A chill snaked up Anya's spine as a cluster of crudely drawn symbols and dates, almost faded into illegibility, caught her eye, all clustered around a stark, handing red as marking a spot deep within the wooded acreage. The sheer precision of the annotations, so unlike a casual doodle, against the backdrop of Valley Ranch's most enduring mystery, was chilling. It was a place that felt both familiar in its locality and terrifyingly alien in its hidden significance. Anya's breath hitched as she realized the almost impossible chance this forgotten document represented. The map, brittle enough to crumble at a touch, revealed a detailed topographical rendering of David Miller's inherited land bordering the Whispering Woods. The annotations were not random scribbles. Expertly deciphered by Anya's unit, they formed a series of coordinates, interspersed with cryptic phrases like Phase 1 complete, commence transfer, and silent departure sequence. The meticulously drawn lines and data points detailed a hidden ingress and egress, a path undetectable by casual observation, leading to a precise location marked by the bold, chilling X. Beneath the X, a faint, almost imperceptible annotation read, "Sanctuary established." The paper seemed to absorb all light, and the ink, though faded, still carried an aura of deliberate, meticulous planning. A small, faded brown stain, remarkably preserved, marred one corner of the map, a detail that, with a jolt, Anya realized could potentially yield DNA. The significance of these markings, in conjunction with David's architectural background and Sarah's known meticulous nature, began to paint a picture far more complex and disturbing than any simple tragedy. This wasn't the map of someone lost, it was the blueprint of someone who had planned to disappear. Anya's immediate reaction was a surge of adrenaline, quickly followed by a paralyzing awe. This was it. After 40 years of silence, of speculation, of dashed hopes, a tangible piece of hard evidence. She meticulously documented the map's condition and its precise location within the wrongly filed box, her hands trembling slightly. She then contacted the county's Historical Archives Department, requesting an immediate on-site verification and security cordon for the annex. Within the hour, Sheriff Brody, now a retired man with a distinguished silver mane and a permanent shadow of unsolved cases in his eyes, was summoned. He arrived with Deputy Evans, who had been a rookie during the original Miller search. Standing beside Anya in the sterile, quiet room, they examined the faded map. Brody's face, usually weathered and stoic, shifted through a spectrum of disbelief and dawning horror. He recognized David's hand in the precise drafting of the topographical map and the annotation style. The efficiency of the notes resonated with the meticulousness he'd always heard described of Sarah. The definitive confirmation came later that afternoon when the county's forensic imaging specialists, using advanced techniques to enhance the barely visible markings, established a clear connection to David's known drafting style. Deputy Evans, his voice thick with emotion, pointed out a faint imprint on the map that, when analyzed, matched a specific type of fountain pen known to be favored by Sarah. The case, once a ghost, was palpably taking on flesh. The discovery triggered an immediate, unprecedented reactivation of the Miller cold case, elevating it instantly to the highest priority within the FBI's National Cold Case Unit. Special Agent in Charge Miller, no relation to David, convened an emergency briefing. Anya Sharma, the discoverer of the map, was placed in charge of the reopened investigation. Files that had been slumbering in dusty archives were pulled, digital reproductions were made, and a task force was assembled, bringing together veteran detectives, forensic specialists, cryptographers, and historical archivists. The topographical survey, now deemed critical evidence, was cross-referenced with contemporaneous satellite imagery and later with enhanced aerial photographs from the initial search, revealing anomalies in the terrain at the specified coordinates that had been dismissed as natural formations in 1985. The implications were staggering: a deliberate, meticulously planned vanishing act, hidden in plain sight for 4 decades. The sheer audacity and precision of the plan, executed so flawlessly that it had rendered the initial extensive searches utterly fruitless, was a chilling testament to David and Sarah Miller's intent. Sheriff Brody, now a consultant, offered his decades of local knowledge, a crucial bridge between the past investigation and the new, urgent pursuit of truth. The news, when it was carefully disseminated, sent a tremor of renewed dread and a flicker of fragile hope through the Valley Ranch community. David's mother, Eleanor Miller, was contacted first. The call, delivered with the gravity befitting a once-in-a-lifetime breakthrough, was overwhelming. For Eleanor, it meant an end to the agonizing void of not knowing, replaced by the stark, painful reality of deception. Sarah's sister, Martha, received the news with a mixture of relief and a profound, gut-wrenching betrayal. The years of waiting, of desperate hope for a miraculous rescue, had been predicated on a lie. The community, which had long memorialized the Millers as victims, now grappled with the unsettling implications of their voluntary erasure, a collective re-evaluation of their cherished neighbors. The discovery of the map wasn't just the reopening of a case, it was the shattering of a 40-year-old narrative, a violent crack in the facade of normalcy that promised to expose a psychological landscape more labyrinthine and disturbing than anyone had ever imagined. The truth, meticulously hidden, was finally on the verge of clawing its way back into the light, promising answers that would redefine everything they thought they knew about David and Sarah Miller. The air in Vicuña County's cold case annex, usually thick with the scent of forgotten paper, crackled with an electric urgency. Anya Sharma's discovery had not merely reopened the Miller file, it had detonated it. A hastily assembled task force, a confluence of FBI analysts, county historical archivists, and Sheriff Brody, now retired but indispensable in his local knowledge, convened in the annex's repurposed conference room. Modern forensic tools, an alien concept in 1985, were deployed with surgical precision. Digital imaging specialists meticulously enhanced the faded topographical map, revealing precise contours and subtle topographical anomalies invisible to the naked eye 40 years prior. Cryptographers, armed with advanced algorithms, painstakingly decipher the coded notations, building a complex timeline of calculated movements and pre-arranged signals. Dr. Lena Hansen, a leading forensic geologist brought in from Quantico, arrived with ground-penetrating radar equipment, her expertise critical in mapping subterranean structures. The atmosphere was charged with a singular purpose: to finally penetrate the nearly impenetrable wall of silence that had swallowed David and Sarah Miller whole, transforming their seemingly ordinary lives into an enduring enigma. This was not just another investigation, it was the culmination of a 4-decade vigil. The heart of the renewed inquiry lay in the meticulous forensic analysis of the survey map and its accompanying documents. The map itself, examined under high-resolution microscopes, revealed faint, overlapping imprints, suggesting it had been used as a working document, folded and refolded countless times within the confines of a briefcase or satchel. Bloodstain pattern analysis, applied to a curious, faint brown smudge on a corner of the map, yielded trace amounts of DNA consistent with a blood type matching Sarah Miller's known medical records, a detail previously overlooked in the chaotic initial search. Temporal analysis of the annotated dates and symbols, cross-referenced with David Miller's architectural project timelines and Sarah's school calendar, began to form a chillingly coherent narrative of meticulous planning. The ground-penetrating radar, deployed over the precise coordinates marked by the red X on David's inherited land, identified a significant anomaly, a distinct, rectangular subterranean void, precisely measured and oriented, a stark contrast to the natural undulating terrain. This anomaly, previously dismissed as a geological oddity in the original cursory aerial scans, now represented a tangible focal point for the investigation. Anya's team pored over old testimonies, each word re-examined through the prism of premeditation. Sheriff Brody recalled David's quiet intensity, always sketching, always planning, and now those plans were revealed to be far more complex than anyone had imagined. Sarah's colleagues' descriptions of her infectious optimism and her love for detailed lesson plans suddenly took on a darker hue when juxtaposed with the map's precise instructions. A seemingly innocuous detail from Mr. Henderson, the neighbor, about seeing David wave as he headed towards his inherited land early that October morning, now provided a critical timestamp for the commencement of the plan. The discovery of Sarah's abandoned satchel near the mailbox, once a symbol of her abrupt disappearance, was now understood as a deliberate staging, a narrative beat in a much larger play. The key, however, lay in David's financial records, which, under intense scrutiny using modern data recovery techniques, exhibited an anomaly, a series of untraceable withdrawals of significant sums of money in the months preceding their disappearance, funds channeled through shell corporations and obscure offshore accounts. These financial breadcrumbs, buried deep in bureaucratic detritus, finally coalesced with the map's cryptic instructions, painting a picture of calculated intent. The cumulative evidence pointed irrevocably to one conclusion: the Millers had not vanished by accident or by force, but had orchestrated their own disappearance with chilling precision. The hidden bunker on the inherited land, now definitively mapped by ground-penetrating radar, was the nexus of their plan. It wasn't a place of refuge from an external threat, but a meticulously constructed escape mechanism, a testament to David's architectural genius and Sarah's cooperative execution. Their disappearance was, in fact, a highly sophisticated act of self-willed erasure, funded by David's illicit financial activities. The motive was not despair, but a calculated desire to escape their burgeoning debts and the predictable constraints of their lives, a radical gamble for a new existence. The perpetrator was not an external party, but an intricate, self-designed operation conceived and executed by David and Sarah Miller themselves, leaving behind a carefully constructed illusion of tragedy. The forensic analysis of the bunker's expected contents, journals, financial records, disguised personal effects was now the final piece of the puzzle, the confirmation of their prolonged survival in deliberate silence. With the truth unearthed, a palpable shift occurred. The FBI, having meticulously reconstructed the Millers' vanishing act, now possessed not only the how but also the why. Agent Sharma briefed Sheriff Brody and the remaining former investigators, detailing the complete sequence of events leading up to and following the Millers' staged departure. The plan was clear: locate the subterranean command center. Anya, supported by Lena Hansen's geological expertise and Sheriff Brody's intimate knowledge of the terrain, coordinated a highly sensitive ground excavation at the coordinates identified by the radar. The objective was not an arrest. The passage of time had rendered that moot, but the irrefutable recovery of evidence that would finally close the 72-hour-long case that haunted Valley Ranch. The families, David's mother Alina and Sarah's sister Martha, were to be informed simultaneously, with support personnel on standby. The scientific certainty of their findings had transformed an open wound into a definitive, albeit painful, conclusion. The final chapter would not be about discovery, but about the profound and potentially devastating revelation of what they had meticulously built and then abandoned. The ground-penetrating radar had been precise. Underneath the dense canopy of the Whispering Woods, on what was once hushed as David Miller's inherited land, a rectangular void, echoing David's architectural precision, lay waiting. Anya Sharma, flanked by Sheriff Brody and a team of FBI technicians, watched as the excavators began their careful descent. It wasn't a crime scene in the traditional sense, but the terminus of a 40-year mystery. The air stilled as the first heavy equipment broke through the concealed entrance. What lay within was not a tomb, but a testament to meticulous planning, a self-sustaining, hidden sanctuary. Inside, they found meticulously organized journals, financial ledgers detailing the illicit origins of their escape fund, and Sarah's worn leather satchel, its contents remarkably preserved, offering a heartbreakingly tangible link to their final terrestrial days. A small vial containing a final DNA sample from Sarah and a small, intricately carved wooden bird, David's known passion, lay by the entrance, offering a silent, final farewell. The revelation wasn't an arrest or a confrontation, but the quiet, irrefutable unveiling of years of calculated deception. Anya, with Sheriff Brody by her side, met with Alina Miller and Martha, Sarah's sister, within hours. The meeting was somber, held not in a sterile precinct, but in the comforting, albeit now shaded, sunroom of Aliner's home. Anya, her voice gentle yet firm, laid out the findings, the meticulous planning, the self-imposed exile, the financial and emotional severing of ties. Aliner listened, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions, stunned disbelief warring with a profound sense of betrayal. For 40 years, she had prayed for her son's return, for an explanation, for any sign of his struggle. Now she had the truth, a truth that stripped away the romanticized narrative of a victim, replacing it with a chilling portrayal of calculated agency. Martha sobbed, not in grief for a lost loved one, but in anger at the decades of false hope, the betrayal of shared family ties, the sheer audacity of their sustained deception. The closure was not the relief they had once desperately craved, but a stark, painful understanding that the people they mourned had, in essence, ceased to exist by their own design. With the unveiling of the Millers' subterranean sanctuary, the legal machinery, dormant for decades, lurched into motion. While David and Sarah Miller were presumed deceased for legal purposes and thus beyond criminal prosecution, the illicit financial activities that funded their escape were thoroughly investigated. Agents uncovered a complex web of offshore accounts and shell corporations, revealing David's hidden engagement in fraudulent real estate schemes that had undoubtedly contributed to their desperation to vanish. The FBI compiled an exhaustive report, detailing their findings with forensic precision, a document that became the official, albeit deeply disturbing, conclusion to the 40-year missing persons case. The community of Valley Ranch, once bound by a shared enigma, now grappled with the unsettling reality of their neighbors' calculated deception. Whispers transformed from theories of abduction and accident to hushed discussions of moral failing and the darker aspects of human ingenuity, forever altering the town's perception of its own peaceful facade. The impact on Valley Ranch was profound. The newly unearthed truth shifted the narrative from a tragic mystery to a cautionary tale of ambition, desperation, and the potent allure of a completely constructed new life. The memorial services for David and Sarah were recontextualized, becoming not just remembrances of loss, but sober reflections on the complexities of truth and the devastating consequences of deception. The Miller property, no longer a site of hopeful vigils but of stark revelation, was eventually purchased by a historical preservation society keen on documenting the site's unique role in a significant cold case. The story of the Millers, once a ghost haunting the town, became a living lesson, a somber impetus for increased financial transparency in local development, and a stark reminder that understanding the visible facade is never enough. For Anya Sharma, the case closed the chapter on a persistent professional ghost, leaving her with a deeper understanding of the human capacity for both profound love and calculated self-preservation, and a reinforced commitment to the tireless pursuit of truth, no matter how buried it may be. The story of David and Sarah Miller serves as a potent, albeit unsettling, reminder of the secrets that can lie beneath the most ordinary surfaces. It underscores the enduring human need for answers, even when those answers bring pain, and the resilience required to confront truths that shatter cherished beliefs. Their meticulously planned vanishing act, funded by deception and sustained by 40 years of silence, illustrates the profound power of human agency, for better or for worse. While their actions left an indelible scar, the relentless pursuit of their truth by agents like Anya Sharma and the enduring quest for understanding by their families highlight the importance of perseverance. The lessons learned about the unseen strains in seemingly happy lives, the deceptive nature of appearances, and the ultimate triumph of meticulously uncovered fact resonate universally. The search for truth, however arduous, is a testament to our collective responsibility to shed light on the darkness, ensuring that even the most carefully constructed illusions eventually yield to the undeniable clarity of reality. What we can learn is to always look closer, to question the narrative, and to never underestimate the depth of the human heart's capacity for both profound connection and absolute severance.